Yep. What up, everybody? It's Turnbark time. We are back, baby. Back. On the turn.
I'm the Bark.
And we are going to be here a long time. This is season 6, episode
11.
11. Big deals out here. Guys, exciting news came out today of the Vatican. I have hiccups. I'm going to try not to have hiccups this entire episode. I have water and Diet Coke. We are going to do our best. But as my mother-in-law would so lovingly tell me, go eat a spoonful of peanut butter. So, anyway, big news today out of the Vatican City. We had our first, the conclave officially has started looking for our next pope. And Barker, the results.
So, on the first day of the conclave, there is only one vote allowed, and we are on Chimney Watch 2025.
25.
So, some of y'all, I'm trying to think, if you were born after 2013, which could be quite a few of you,
Yep.
you've never been through this before. So, we're going to talk about how do we get a new pope, and when they vote, if they vote and they do not reach a 2/3 majority, we will see black smoke like we saw today, which means we have not yet, or the Catholic Church has not yet elected a new pope.
We're popeless at the moment. However, pretty standard at this point. The fact of this is the largest conclave that has ever been assembled. We're talking 133 cardinals from around the globe, and 2/3 agreement. We were doing the math really quick, Bark. I think we tried to do the math in class today. I believe the number is 85 to agree.
Sounds about right. Let me.
I did 120 divided by 3, which is 40, and then, or not, yeah, which is 80, and then 80, and then 13, which would be 4, but 5 because it's 13 is what I was going with.
Oh, hold on. I can't.
No, did I not math?
No, I can't math. You can math. I need to multiply by 0.66 and not by 0.8, which would be 80%.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we don't need 80%.
For the record, we are social studies teachers.
Yep, we'll put it on the record.
So I came out
I was
with,
bad. 88.
yeah, 88. So I came out with 88 or
Yep.
87.78. You obviously
Yeah,
can't
so 88 because we can't have,
round up.
I mean, unless we have a really small cardinal, but I don't think that's going to happen. So, but anyway, since this is something new for those of you, born after 2013, again, the last pope took the name Pope Francis. He was originally from Argentina, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And he succeeded Pope Benedict. I'm not going to remember the number. Bark, you got the number handy?
16.
Pope Benedict the 16th. Again, there have been 16 popes that have picked Benedict, the Saint Benedict, as their papal name. But Pope Benedict actually stepped down, which is a different type of procedure than what we're dealing with right now. So,
Yeah, Pope Francis died at age 88. He's been unwell for a little bit, so it was kind of like Jimmy Carter.
mhm.
In the aspect that, like, he pretty publicly said that he was going to the hospital and probably didn't expect to come back from it.
Yeah.
He was born Jorge Mario Bergoglio.
Mhm.
Mother bear. Yeah, he was the first Latin American pope. So, I mean, that was a big step.
Yeah.
According to Pew, man, his approval rating was 78% among American Catholics.
Yeah. Yeah. He overall, I think, was a pretty popular guy. He was a lot more liberal in his belief system. He wanted the Catholic Church to adjust to the times rather than to try to stay rigid, which was a unique thing, and I think actually benefited him in the long run. So,
Yeah. And I mean, like, there are 1.4 billion Catholics worldwide.
yeah,
Um, Christianity in general, those of you who've taken world history for me, know that I talk about like it's one of the most prolific religions that spreads across the globe. And so like Catholicism is kind of like what I call like Christianity, like the OG Christianity.
right. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean it's a matter of what do we do? You know, Pope Francis passed away. He had a funeral, I think, on the 26th of April.
Yep.
And then they had like a proper amount of time for to pay him respect. And then the conclave or the election, right? It's a conclave because they use a different word because it's not politics, it's religion. Um,
I thought Conclave, though, if I remember correctly, Conclave actually has, because you've taught me to always look at etymology.
yeah,
Um, and did you see that where it's like Conclave's etymology? It comes from to the key, I be believe is or it's with key, because
a lockable, yeah,
clavis.
like a lockable room.
Yep.
That's right.
And so again, this lockable room, actually, if you go on, I think Fox News had a good clip of it, of them locking the Sistine Chapel, which again, painted by Barker.
Painted by or fresco work done by the Leonardo da Vinci.
No, great guess
Oh,
though.
Michelangelo.
There
Michelangelo.
you go. Keep the Ninja
Sorry.
Turtles rolling.
So my bad.
No, you're good.
Michelangelo was my initial, and then I second guessed. I double clutched it. So
No,
just remember,
you're good.
kids, whenever doing multiple choice, go with your gut.
Yep.
Be like Luke in the Death Star trench. Turn off your
Speaking of like the
targeting
AP test
computer.
tomorrow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
trust your
So,
heart. I thought it was interesting too because they lock them in the conclave and
mhm.
like the cardinals don't have any contact with the outside world, like no
Nope.
phones, no internet, no phone, like no landlines, like they don't come out. Um, and they're kind of stay in like a dormitory.
Yes.
And it's actually the interesting thing is like Pope Francis actually lived in the dormitory. He actually preferred to stay in kind of like the papal like roadhouse
Mhm.
rather than actually live in like the papal palace.
Correct. He was a much more
And
simpler person when it came to that.
I think it was like, they were saying that the what is it, the Domus Sanctae, like it's or the Casa Santa Maria, I believe is what it is, and it's easier to say when it's not in Latin, my opinion. But they're saying it's like a three-star hotel, which I
Yeah.
mean, I've been to my fair share of like one-star motels.
Yep.
So they're like, oh, it's rough in it. And that's like, it's got more than one star. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think that's as rough as it's intended.
It's doing fine. But again, that was one of his big things though, is he got rid of the throne, like the papal throne, and changed it to a wooden chair. He got rid of a lot of the jewels that were crusted on some of the papal stuff and preferred a lot simpler garb because he felt like that's where some of the church loses its way. So, because he always considered himself a priest. He was like, I'm not, yes, I'm a pope, but I'm still all the way back to my beginnings of being a priest and working my way through. So, but back to the conclave.
Yeah. I
So, go ahead. No, go ahead.
was gonna say it almost sounds a little bit like, that Martin Luther guy,
Yeah.
uh, who said that it shouldn't be so much about the right, had the problem with like lay investiture and like
Indulgences and
indulgences. Thank you.
yep.
Um, yeah, kind of getting back to like, and that's where Pope can choose any name that they want once they become Pope. He chose Pope Francis after Francis of Assisi. Um, and so like, what is it? There was one vote tonight. I think you said there's what, four votes tomorrow?
Yeah. So the pattern goes now. So now that they're locked in, I was reading they before they go into the conclave, they hear two sermons. And the first one is like almost like a state. State of the Union for the Catholic Church, right? So here's everything going on in the world. Here's our church. Here's, what we're dealing with. And then the second one is more of like the focal point of like being a cardinal, right? The responsibility, the duty, everything like that. So then they take a vow of secrecy. Kind of reminded me a little bit of like Declaration of Independence, U.S. Constitution kind of deal, where it's like you need to like keep this secret so outside world doesn't dictate or skew opinion or anything like that. And then they vote. Now, when they vote, they vote one time, and I believe it's written down. And I saw a couple of different things. This is very secretive. It's not something that's sorry, it's known to the outside world and things like that. But like there's like a signature or like an initial in the corner via the ballot that they use. They take all those ballots together, they count them, and if it doesn't meet two-thirds, then what they end up doing is they throw it into the stove. They architects, not architects, what am I thinking of? Engineers installed the a chimney on the Sistine Chapel. It's not always there, it's just there for conclaves. And they put it in the stove and they light it on fire. And then to make sure that the smoke does not appear white, which is an indicator of a new pope that has been successfully elected. They put in, I believe it's something along the lines of like a coal tar kind of thing to make sure that the smoke is black, right? So it's not any confusion. Now, what will happen is tomorrow there will be four votes. There will be two in the morning and two in the afternoon. And this will continue, I believe, if I remember correctly, for 3 days. Um,
Or until a new pope is elected.
or until correct, a new pope could be elected at any of these times. Um, and so tomorrow we should be looking at four votes. So by the time you and I wake up on the west coast of the United States, there will probably have already been one, if not two votes already conducted, and on the verge of number three. So,
If I remember
they
right,
just
the votes are counted by three random members of the conclave.
correct.
And so I think I don't know if it really wasn't clear whether that changes with every vote, and it might. I mean,
Again, a lot of secrecy shadowing this. I did not find anything that said um, the actual hard number, uh, if they rotate or anything. Um, according, I've just plugged in really quick to Vatican News. Um, so let me go. You keep going. I'll take a look at this. So
okay. One of the other things I thought was interesting too is that in December, Pope Francis appointed 21 new cardinals, and it made me. I was talking with some senior, I guess our government kids that are taking American government instead of just traditional CWP. Is it did Pope Francis pack the conclave?
ooh,
We talk about like packing the Supreme Court
yeah,
in the United States. So like, is this conclave packed in a way to continue the trend of being more liberal, and to prevent kind of the pendulum swing,
yeah, to the back.
back to conservatism or a more conservative approach? So I mean, it's really kind of come down to like the other thing that I think is kind of, I don't know how to feel about it. Um, there's, according to internet sources, many of them using cryptocurrency.
Hmm.
There are $29 million in wagers
Really?
on who the next pope will be, which seems really kind of like sacrilegious or inappropriate.
I
Gamble on,
I'm I mean, gambling in itself is considered like by the church a sin, so it's not like I mean, I don't know. It'd be interesting. I was having this conversation with my brother, because he was talking about it with his friends. And my brother's a practicing Catholic and things like that. And, and so he was talking about it, his friends were like, well, like it's really not that big of a deal. And it's like, well, it kind of is because a lot of our problems in the world, I feel like, stem from religion in terms of like competing religions against each other. And And so here's a person who, like you said earlier, represents 1.4 billion people on Earth, right? That can have a voice to say on how to handle some of these issues. In fact, and I know we're kind of looping back from the conclave and stuff like that, but Pope Francis is said to have called the cardinal who represented the Catholic Church in the Middle East, in Gaza, I, be I believe once a week, or no, every night since the stuff with Israel has been going on. Not those stuff, sorry. Since the attack by Hamas October 7th, I believe, on Gaza or on Israelis, and the war that has since escalated because of that. And so that's a voice in major issues going on around the world. Um,
Well, that's the deputy pope. So
yeah.
for I mean, I'm not Catholic, but like, I guess the parallel to me is it's kind of like saying he's like the vice president pope.
Yes, exactly.
And that is Pietro Parolin,
Mhm.
who I believe is Italian born. Yeah,
Yes, yes,
Italian
true,
born.
true time.
He is the leading or most likely successor according to
The odds makers.
odd makers. Yeah, it just seems really weird to me that like we've gone to a point where like sports betting, it's not even sports betting anymore. Like it's just
Yeah,
people are talking about like the dangers of like you're sitting there like 3 a.m. can't sleep betting on like Yugoslavian, which doesn't exist, but like
yeah,
Yugoslavian
we got
like
your point.
bottle cap baseball.
Yep,
Um played by lemurs, you know.
right.
So like I thought it was an interesting thing that like people it just seems like everything's a wager now.
Yeah.
But
Okay. I have the count. It doesn't say how they're picked. It just says how they count the votes.
okay,
This is from Vatican News .va, so I'm assuming that's the Vatican's like servers.
probably.
Uh okay, so it says after all the votes have been cast, the first scrutineer, which like you talked about, three random cardinals. So that's why I'm saying I think they keep them the whole way through. Shakes the chalice to mix the ballot. So basically, what's happened. So I guess I jumped the gun. So when they vote and they get on it gets put on a plate, right? Symbolically, I'm guessing for the bread for the Eucharist of the body representing the body of Jesus that Catholics take every mass. They take those plates and they shake them into a chalice. The chalice is the cup that's used to drink wine, representing the blood of Christ. Uh, Again, a symbol of the Eucharist and everything like that. Christ did it on, or Jesus of Nazareth is did that on the Last Supper before he was executed by the Romans. And he says, take this bread and eat it. This is my body. And then take this blood or drink this cup. This is my blood, which will be shed for you. My apologies about the hiccup still, guys. I'm trying to battle through. So the first scrutineer will shake the chalice that has all the votes in it to shuffle them up. The last scrutineer then counts them one by one, transferring them into a second empty container. The number of ballots doesn't match the number of voters. All ballots are burned and a new vote is held immediately. If the count is correct, the ballots are opened and read. So the first thing they're just doing is they're just counting those. Then what will happen is all three scrutineers will sit at a table before the altar. The first one will reads the name written on the ballot and passes it to the second. The second confirms the name, who hands it to the third, and then who reads it aloud for everyone to hear and records the vote. If two ballots appear to be written by the same person and bear the same name, they count as one vote. If they show different names, both are invalid, though the overall vote remains valid. Once the votes have been read and tallied, the final scrutineer pierces each ballot with a needle through the word iligo and threads them together with a string. The ends of the string are tied in a knot, and the ballots are stored for safekeeping. And then this is where we go into the burning. So that bundle of ballots then is pushed in the stove to be burned. Again, two-thirds agreement, white smoke. They actually throw in a certain canister to make sure it burns white. So they used to use wet straw and it actually caused some serious problems back in the day because there were two false alarms, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah. So I mean it's I guess it kind of from an American perspective, like we have C-SPAN. Not
Mhm.
that not that many of you are fine connoisseurs, but in
Yeah.
times when major legislation is going through the House or the Senate, you can tune in and hear the votes live as they're coming in. So like the fact that there's still secrecy that like the Vatican is considered like a lot of the practices are considered to still be very traditional and conservative. And like honestly, the actual only requirement to be elected pope is that you're a male and Catholic.
Yeah, baptized. You have to be
Yeah,
baptized.
I'm baptized. But I mean, like, it's a pretty low bar.
But that shocked me again as somebody who is raised Catholic that you don't have to be confirmed as well. Like, so you don't have to be considered an adult in the Catholic Church
Hmm.
to be Pope, which I thought was interesting. But it also makes me wonder when the sacrament of confirmation like came about, and I did not do that digging to see.
Well, but
Uh,
it's also it could also be like the Supreme Court doesn't have a age requirement, but the
true,
implication, the thought process
true.
for being a Supreme Court justice is you must be pretty
Right, you'd be
vested in
logical. You have to
religion.
pass the Senate confirmation, which again, you'd have to pass the cardinal confirmation. So,
Yeah, and I think
um,
I was looking at I found an article that listed like the top 22 possible
right.
like cardinals to become pope, and it is I guess precedent or past practice, right?
They call it precedent. I think it's fair.
Yeah, precedent says that like the majority of it, it's most likely going to be a cardinal,
Yes. It
right?
has
And it
not
doesn't.
been a,
It, go
I
ahead.
believe the last time it wasn't a cardinal was in the 12th century.
So it's been a minute.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute. I believe the last time, like they said they started electing cardinals, I believe it was 1246. And they've been electing cardinals ever since. So,
Um, and like so, like we talked about Pietro Parolin, who's 70
mhm.
and kind of like
Oh,
involved in like a lot of geopolitics, Vietnam, North Korea, Israel, China.
we left off that we left off that key detail that you have to be under 80 to vote.
Oh
To be
yeah,
a
yeah,
part of the conclave, you actually have to be a cardinal, but you have to be a cardinal that's under 80 years old. You can't vote if you're over 80.
yeah. Because I think they were saying there. I have a number written down that says like there's 250 cardinals.
Right. And only
Uh,
133 can vote.
yeah. Hmm.
So,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
yeah, I had this conversation with a student who asked me about that and was like, Turner, And I was like, yep, no, yep. So,
Perhaps.
um,
Like looking at it, the majority of them, I think the youngest one that I show is 60,
right.
and the most experienced, we should say, is 79, I believe.
Okay, yeah. I was gonna say, well, I thought there was one guy on there who was 80 because he couldn't vote.
Maybe. I mean, I don't have every single.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
he's buried in the top, but I know he's in the top. Like they've talked about him in like New York Times and a couple of the other places for being a thing. So, folks, like we said, today we got black smoke. I believe I got that email around. I got it from the New York Times, so obviously it wasn't super live, but I got it at 12:15 in the afternoon. I actually stopped class to announce that we had no. So here's how it's gonna work. So tomorrow is day two. 4 votes. If nobody is elected by the end of day two, which again would be, I guess you could say unprecedented because the past three have been elected in, or last one was 5 days, right? 5 days? Yeah. I think John Paul II was 8 votes, 3 days, I think is what we said. So 3 days. So Pope John Paul II was in 1978 or 87. You remember?
I don't off
Nope, you're
the
good.
top of my head.
My mom is sitting there looking at the screen right now, telling me what year it was. Um, but anyway, so he gets elected. He's the one of the more longer ones that we've had. Uh, so, but let's say that it doesn't. Tomorrow we go through no pope. So then we go to day three. Day three, 4 votes. If we don't have one at the end of day three, then they actually take a break. They take a 1 day break. And basically, what it is, it's a day of prayer. It's informal discussion. So they talk with other cardinals, right? Like just in a more what's the word I'm looking for? In a more casual setting, I guess would be the way I would probably describe it. Obviously, there's not a lot that's casual in this instance. And then there's a brief spiritual exoneration by the senior cardinal deacon. Then voting resumes again. If seven after every 7 rounds, there's another pause with an exoneration, right? And then it keeps going up. If there's no pope after 21 votes, the final pause is prayer, dialogue, reflection. But at that point, you're narrowed down to two. Whoever got the top 2 votes in the last vote is you can only pick them two. So we are also trying something new. We're gonna just announce this to everybody if it looks a little different. Barker, I'm looking in the corner. We're using Zoom because Skype has officially been taken offline. So we have roughly 9 minutes that we got to wrap this up. Um,
So we can both see the clock now.
yes, instead of me seeing if he knows what I'm talking about. So, but again, it's really interesting. It's something the world doesn't see very often, right? It's not and you have to be paying attention to it, when it happens and stuff like that. Like I said, Pope Benedict stepped down, which was unique. Um, and then Pope Francis is elected and obviously passes away. Pope John Paul II passes away. And both of them were very popular popes. Pope Benedict was not as popular with people. So, but just an interesting time that we're living in. Cool things that can happen. Again, Pope Francis is the first Latin American Pope. We have a chance to have the first African Pope, the first Asian Pope. They're both in the running, and I don't like to say odds because of the odds maker thing, but just to understand the where they stand, they're both in the top part of like could be legitimately considered top candidates for the papacy. So,
Well, I mean, it's important to understand that for a long time, the Catholic Church was dominated by European candidates and probably, I would, assume like Western European candidates.
Italians and French,
Yeah. So like the
Spanish.
idea that people are actually looking like another, I guess, person with a good possibility.
Mhm.
I guess if you want to look at it, like people are predicting to be like kind of in like the second most
Yeah,
likely
yeah,
is Luis Antonio Tagle, who would be the first. He's Filipino, he's
yeah.
67, viewed as being fairly liberal, so kind of mirroring the route that Pope Francis was going. You know what I mean? And so like it could be a really interesting time. Like
Yeah.
I watched an interview, they were in San Francisco, I think, interviewing like, yeah, they're interviewing like Filipino, like an enclave of Filipino people in San Francisco. And like they call him like Lolo Chico, like Grandpa Chico or something. Like they have like a
Oh, okay.
nickname. You know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah.
it's makes the papacy like more approachable.
Yes.
Like I don't think it's inappropriate, like a level of like inappropriateness. You
No,
know what I
not
mean?
at
But
all.
like it's more of like a term of like endearment kind of a deal. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
No,
because
because so as again jumping in, it would be one where it's like a lot of Catholics, especially when the Pope like talks and stuff like that, and gives those types of things. They take them seriously, and they might not agree with everything. It's any elected official. They're going to do what they think is best, and so they're going to run it the church. And again, I want to stress like when we talk about liberal versus conservative, we're not talking about what we consider liberal in like politics and conservative in politics. We're talking about like conservative would be closer to original church doctrine, whereas liberal is more like willing to uh, be open to as the world changes, you're open to new ideas and things like that. And so that's kind of the difference between these two. Dang it. So I'm glad you're enjoying it. Um, but yeah, it'll be interesting. And again, like 1.4 billion people, and the people do build an attachment to this person. He's the leader of the faith, and it's a big deal to those people. But it's also, like I said earlier, it's a big deal to the world because here's a person who's going to like, I mean, we can talk about Pope Francis, like one of his last meetings with the Vice President of the United States, right? He meets with world leaders all the time. I compare to having like the Dalai Lama, right, the leader of Tibetan Buddhism, meeting with us. Like they're considered influential people. They're important. So this is a guy who's going to map out the fate of the Catholic Church for the next 15, 20 years.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to think about. Like we were talking earlier about world history and like the Pope settles the dispute between the Spanish and the Portuguese and the Treaty of Tordesillas in the late 15th century, like right after Columbus finds the Americas to split stuff up. So like in older times was far more directly involved in politics.
Yeah.
Now I would say is more of an indirect influence on
Mhm.
politics. But like, I mean, I'm not Catholic, I'm not British. So like people are like, I love there's the American people who really care about like the British royal family.
Right.
Like I could care less. Like I'm not a huge like I don't sit and watch the royal wedding, but
Right.
like I'm paying attention to who the Pope is. Like I've had kids that sat there and asked me like, well, hey, wait, like how does that when do we get a new one? Like when are they going to start voting? And like
Yep.
they're asking me, and it's like, well, like I'm not Catholic, but I know because like again, the Pope is a world leader. Like he's a
Right.
figurehead of religion that influences policy indirectly all across the globe.
Yeah. So, but this has been a fun one. Well, so we have to tell a little secret. So last week we were going to do the Papal Conclave, but obviously, or 2 weeks ago, the Pope had already passed away, but we like Barker came up with that draft idea, which again, I think we were okay. What'd you say? I was trying to remember what you said for your pick. I think you went O line. I think we both went O line. I like the kid out of
Yeah.
North Dakota, so. And I got that safety I wanted. I wanted the safety, and I got him in round two. Go Hawks. Um, but we were looking at it, and I asked him to push it because we found out it would be around this time or May 7th. And so but my gut was just like, please don't elect a pope because it's going to be really weird to have this whole explanation and then just to say, oh, and by the way, they picked this guy. So
So by the
good
time you
luck.
listen to this tomorrow, there could be a new
Oh,
pope.
easily could be a pope. We could wake up tomorrow to one. So,
Yeah.
but all right, Bark, anything else?
I just think like it seems to be the norm that usually day two in the more modern day two or day three, like we should have a decision. Not like back in the olden times where it took anywhere from 3 months to 3 years.
Oh, that was the other one. Fun fact, how long was the longest conclave?
3 year or no, longest conclave?
Yeah, I believe it was 1,000.
Was it 3 years?
Yeah, it's like 1,090 days or something like that was the longest conclave.
So I think
Um,
that's why they put in that provision where like they go to the top two
yeah,
vote leaders after so many days to prevent that. And that's again why it's a 3-star hotel next to the Vatican or in the Vatican, not
yep.
a 5-star.
Yep. And then the other thing, really quick, just to jump on it, the conclave originates because they go that long period without a pope, and they can't agree. And the locals are actually lock them in the Sistine Chapel or in different chapel, sorry, different church, and only give them bread and water so that they hurry up and make a decision. They even actually take the roof off of it just to make them hurry up. So, all right. Hey, good luck to your kiddos tomorrow. AP, go get them. Yep, the odds will ever be in your favor. And remember, just give it your all and give it your best. And even if you don't get, three, you know, Bark's there for you. So
And in doubt, write it out.
love that too. Okay, well, until next time, I'm the turn,
I'm the Bark.
and we're gonna be here a long time. Have a good night, everybody,
Be safe.
and be well.